When I say that I'm an educator, there's often the assumption that I've always had a love for learning. My response, no. In fact, I can remember when I was in the 8th grade, my mom went to parent-teacher conferences. I waited all evening for her to get home because I knew that she would find out that my grades were terrible. Needless to say, when she got home, I was nowhere to be found. I tell people I graduated from high school without knowing the difference between there, and there. And I don't think I read one book in any of my classes entirely. It wasn't that I didn't have great teachers, because I did. I just didn't take school that seriously growing up. In fact, I would say that any educational accomplishments I had to that point, I could largely credit to my mother, who willed me to be successful. It wasn't until I got to college and I took an African American Studies course, an English literature course, that I began to like learning. This like turned to a love, and this love turned to my wanting to be an educator. Now, as a higher education administrator, I spent the past decade thinking about all things higher ed. Things like, what does access to college really mean, and who has it? How do we make the best and most inclusive environments to help our students be successful? How do we help our students learn, but also get what they ultimately came for, a degree? And the most important question, how do we make sure that our students wake up in time for their 8 o'clock classes? Y'all know that. On college campuses, we have buzzwords like educated and well-rounded. We challenge our students to take ownership in their learning both inside and outside the classroom. But we don't articulate as well as we can sometimes the idea that teaching and learning can happen at any moment and in more ways than most of us think about. I once had a colleague ask me, Brandon, when you meet with students, why does it take so long? I said, because every time I meet with a student, my goal is that they will leave knowing something they didn't know before, and that the same will happen for me. He said, that sounds good, but that takes too much work. I said, if we're not doing this, then what are we here for? When I meet with students, I make it a point to give book suggestions, to give article suggestions. I ask, what classes are you taking? How can you educate me? In my personal life, I ask my friends and family, what articles have you read lately? What books have you read? You see, I believe that everyone should be a teacher and everyone should be a student. So how do we get to this place where teaching and learning can happen at any moment? I believe first we have to listen. I think Stephen Covey was right when he said, we must first seek to understand, then be understood. I once had a white student who had to meet with me as part of his sanction for going around his residence hall yelling the N-word. You should have seen this student's face when I, as a black man, sat across from him and said, why do you think it was okay to say this word? I look just like that too. His eyes were like, whoa. In that moment, I could have ridiculed him. And I really wanted to, part of me wanted to. But I chose to give him the benefit of the doubt. I chose to listen. By choosing to listen, I learned that he had never had a meaningful relationship with a black person, and that he thought the N-word was okay because he had heard it said in popular media. By choosing to listen to me, he learned about the real impact of that word and learned about the lived experience of a black man. We had several conversations over the course of a few weeks, and I honestly believe they impacted him in a positive way. Listening provides opportunities for teaching and learning to happen, but it's not just about listening, it's about shifting our paradigm and where we think teaching and learning can occur. Abraham Maslow said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem will look like a nail. Similar, if we allow our blinders to make us think that teaching and learning can only happen in a classroom or educational setting, that's where it'll happen. However, if we embrace this idea of a global classroom, we can learn in multiple places. Most people who know me will say I have fully embraced the bow tie movement. I like bow ties because when you lean over food, you don't have to worry about it getting caught. I like the style of bow ties, but most of all, I like bow ties because I believe they make me look good. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why I didn't wear a bow tie today, because I said I'm going to look too good if I wear a bow tie. Before there were bow ties, there were ties. And I remember the first time I learned how to tie a tie. My stepfather had been trying to teach me for several weeks, and of course, this was before YouTube, so I wasn't really getting it. And one day, we were on a Metrolink in St. Louis, headed to an event, and I was trying to tie my tie. You know, there's a gentleman who came up to me. He looked to be of lesser means. He wasn't wearing a tie. He wasn't particularly dressed well, and he said, I can teach you how to tie that tie. I looked at him like, You can't teach me how to tie this tie. You ain't even wearing a tie. But I said, okay. And in the most random of places, I learned a skill that I've carried with me throughout the entirety of my personal and professional life. That was a great moment, not just because of what I learned, but because of who was there. Ray Leblond says, you can learn something every day if you just pay attention. I ask myself, who am I paying attention to? Is it only the people who I think can teach me a lesson, or is it everyone I come in contact with? Lately, some of the best lessons I've learned have actually come from my little nieces and nephews. I love talking to them because they don't care about my educational accomplishments. They don't care about what I do at work. All they care about is if I play with them, if I have gum, or if I have money. And I tell them I never have money. They often teach me lessons about humility. They teach me how it's more important to work to live and not live to work. And they teach me how to enjoy the small things in life. How powerful would it be if each and every one of us tried to teach and or learn in every moment? I think we can do it, but we just have to listen. We have to give the benefit of the doubt. We have to treat every place and every space like a classroom. And we have to believe that each and every one of us has something powerful to say. Thank you.